Hi everyone, welcome back to Owen's Treats. It is now officially fall, but basically what I had planned for today is that I found this really nice recipe on Pinterest. It's baked apple fritters. And I thought the recipe would be very hard, but it's actually pretty simple, and it's all done in the oven too, so another thing less to worry about. That's what we're going to be making today, baked apple fritters, so let's get into it. So to begin, we have all of our ingredients here. I have 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour. I have 3/4 cup of white whole wheat flour. I have half a cup of brown sugar. I have 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, with 1 teaspoon of cloves, and then I have a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I have 6 tablespoons of butter, half cup of milk, 1 large egg, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, and I have 1 cup or 3 apples. And then for our glaze, which is optional, 1 cup of confectioner sugar, another 2 tablespoons of milk, and another 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. With that, let's start with our first step into making our baked apple fritters. So for our first step, we're going to combine all of our dry ingredients together. So into a large bowl, we're going to combine our 2 flours, our brown sugar, our spices, our baking powder, and our salt. And then we're going to whisk this until everything is combined. And so now that we have our dry ingredients mixed together, we're going to take our butter and we're going to cut them into smaller pieces, and I'm going to slowly incorporate it into our flour mixture until it becomes almost crumbly. I'm going to use a butter knife, and I'm going to use this butter knife to cut up our butter into smaller pieces. We're going to add it straight into our flour mixture. And then using our whisk, we're just going to slowly mash our butter into our flour mixture until it becomes nice and crumbly. Okay, so now that our flour mixture mixed with our butter has become nice and crumbly, we're going to set this off to the side while we work on our wet ingredients. So for our next step, we're going to combine our wet ingredients. So we have our vanilla, egg, and our milk. And so into a medium-ish bowl, we're going to add in half a cup of our milk. We're going to add in 1 large egg. And then we're going to add in 1 teaspoon of our vanilla extract. And then we're going to whisk this until everything is nice and fully combined. So now that our wet ingredients are done, we're going to move on to our next step, which is going to be combining our wet ingredients and our dry ingredients before we put our apple fritters into the oven. So now we have our wet and dry ingredients. We're going to mix them together to make our apple fritters. I also have our diced apples here. The recipe asked for 3 diced apples, but 2 seems to be just enough. So we're going to combine our wet and dry. So we're going to take our wet ingredients, pour them into our dry. And with a spatula or wooden spoon like I'm using, we're going to just start to mix this together. Once you see it kind of gets to the halfway point between kind of semi-dry, completely mixed together, we're going to add in our 2 diced apples, roughly 1 cup. We're going to add that to our... It should be almost equal amounts dough to apple, if not a little bit more apple. So now that our dough has been put together, and before we plop these onto our baking sheet, we're going to preheat our oven to 400 degrees. Then we're going to move on to putting this onto a baking sheet. So now that our oven is preheated to 400 degrees, or is preheating to 400 degrees, I should say, we're going to start scooping out our apple fritters. So I'm going to take an ice cream scoop, because that's a good accurate way to measure. It's just around 1/4 a cup. We're going to take a scoop of it, and I'm going to plop it down onto our baking sheet. I'm going to keep scooping out these apple fritters, but once I'm done, I'm going to Throw these apple fritters in the oven, in our preheated 400-degree oven, for 11 to 13 minutes until they're kind of goldish brown on the top. And when you insert a toothpick, it comes out clean. And then we'll move on to our glaze. And we're going to make the glaze as they're cooking, as they're baking, I should say. Okay, so while our apple fritters are baking, we're gonna make the icing or the glaze real quick, and it's real easy. It's just milk, vanilla, and our confectioner sugar. So into a small bowl, I have 1 cup of confectioner sugar, and I'm gonna add in 2 tablespoons of milk, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And 1 teaspoon is just 1/4 of a tablespoon. And then we are going to mini whisk this together until a nice glaze comes together. We're going to set this glaze aside while our fritters bake, and then we will top our fritters once they've cooled down with our glaze. And here are our finished apple fritters out of the oven, and I've glazed them already, but here they are. And so yeah, I want to thank you guys for joining me on an episode of Owen's Treats. I hope you guys like this video and make these for yourselves. Thank you guys for joining me in an episode of Owen's Treats, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye!